Is it level?
No, I slide slowly.
Pull it off, protecting it from there.
So what are we trying to do with this? We're trying to introduce the concept.
We're introducing. You had an idea,
Yeah.
and you're going to share that magic idea with us right now.
All right, cool. So is that we're gonna run? Are we live?
We're live.
We're live. All right, cool. So now, as in now.
Yes, now.
Like not soon, but now. All right.
Yeah,
Cool.
It was a great idea.
Well, thanks, Pat.
That's all right.
But we've been chatting, haven't we? That kind of as we've gone along, is that we're actually getting more and more interested in, I guess, the subject matter that kind of leads up to the actual choice of the guests. So, I think what we took out of year one was very much that there's lots of kind of people who are actually trying to make a difference in terms of inside our community through either changing the way that we're actually interacting with one another or transacting with one another. But the themes that are actually in that work, there's probably less width in terms of kind of the, I guess if there's lots of breadth of depth of guests, it's the width of the subject matter that is kind of, we're starting to get more and more, sorry, I'm saying that the wrong way around.
No, you said.
No, it sounds good, but it's actually the wrong way around.
Now, do you mean you're also trying to say when you chatted to me, you're excited about the idea of bringing people along, our audience along, people who are interested in the topics, behind the process, so that thinking about and formulating those questions
for sure
about the guests who we're going to have on, and help come on the exploration, I suppose, of getting to that point, and then also the process.
Yeah.
So you're talking of having sort of doing it in a rhythm of 4.
Yeah. So, kind of just coming back to the part before. So it's more about getting into the depth of the subject matter, whereas there's kind of those width of guests that we could actually kind of speak to. So I think if season 1 was kind of about the width in terms of kind of actually putting a little bit of kind of framework around kind of, the people that are actually trying to change the way that we're transacting with one another, but also interacting inside of our communities. Really, I think kind of going forward, as you're saying, it's about the actual kind of inquiry into that subject matter in terms of the actual depth, the depth that's there. So, we've been chatting about that maybe we do that through kind of, kind of a series of 4 episodes, whereas the first is kind of, I think us kind of actually investigating the theme, setting up kind of what we believe it actually is and some of the questions that we have from kind of, I guess the primary research that both you and I do before we go away and actually select a guest. Yeah.
Definitely, and I really liked your idea of inviting some people along the journey as well, and throwing some questions towards or areas of interest, because I think it's a great way of inviting people along the process. Often you don't get to see it. I remember first looking at a sketchbook. You see your finished work and you're always like, how did it get to that point? But it's such a nice way to bring people along and scratch at the surface, and then also pay homage to some of the guests that we do have on, and really be able to give justice to the work they've been doing.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, I think it is really, really cool, because there's so much of this that kind of like we go into an interview. I think in terms of that. So it's kind of like we'll have a bit of information, and we'll kind of have the questions that we actually want to ask. But I think part of this is actually us reflecting on those questions and then kind of posing those, and actually kind of and asking the audience to kind of also give us their questions around kind of the area that we're actually exploring to ask our guest. So whoever that may be. And then start to think about kind of, well, what actually comes after that? So what are the actual conclusions that we're actually taking out of that? So what has it actually kind of left us with as an impression at the end of the kind of the four episodes?
Yeah, which I think is a great spot to leave and to allow space to have that reflection, because you and I, that was, I suppose, main impetus to create this new rhythm. We'd always have a conversation pre and post these conversations with our guests. And they were quite juicy ones, because they really got us thinking in our minds and got us rattling around with problems that we face day to day, and then also just esoteric problems that we see as well, which is a great invitation to think like that and to think differently, but to also see how they may change the way we think and transact.
For sure.
And definitely interact, because we're in the age of change.
For sure. That. Yeah, and like we may have to like establish like, I don't know, like a crazyometer or something like that. But I think, you know, some like our conversations, I guess, is we kind of actually, you know, I think the interesting part about, to me, like when I reflect back on it, was season 1 was very much kind of figuring out like, is this actually a thing? Is there kind of, you know, enough people kind of actually doing this, and what are the areas of change? And I think through that process, I mean, we've kind of covered everything from kind of sexual violence kind of through to kind of indigenous rights, through to kind of where the economy is starting to head, where kind of community is actually starting to build, you know, and all the way back to then kind of, you know, like big kind of ticket items as well around kind of, you know, the notion of kind of technology and data, and how that's actually shaping us in terms of kind of responding to those issues. So I think it's, you know, it's kind of, it's almost a natural kind of byproduct of that. But it's also, I think, about us, as, you know, as you're pointing out, is actually having that conversation that we tend to have, and actually just putting that on air. You know, I mean, it could go terribly, but let's see.
Well, let's see. Hence the neck protector.
Yeah, it's true. Fat is protecting the neck. Yeah.
But we're also protecting the neck and building a bit more of a studio here today. Hence where we're heading. So we're going to build it and be able to incorporate some different fun elements, I suppose, to enhance that coming along the journey.
Yeah,
and we'll be able to grow and see how it feels. Who knows?
For sure. So we're about to kind of embark, aren't we, on kind of, I guess, 2.0 of the owl nest. So we've kind of, you know, initially set up kind of, I guess a sound studio and kind of all the technology that's going with it. But I think, you know, kind of the task now is to actually build that sound stage, right? So that's what we're about to get onto. Hence the if you haven't picked it, hence the attire.
So if we're ready to get cracking,
we better get into it. Yeah. Stop messing around.
Everyone enjoys the ride. I'm sure we will.
Well, I think yes. But you never know. You never know. I mean, but I do. You know, I do think it's kind of it's a kind of natural. You know, I guess I often take most of my kind of faith in things about how forced does it actually feel, and I think this feels like a very kind of natural extension of the stuff that we're actually doing. But I think it's ultimately about our confidence to put that out. You know, I think that's what I'm kind of most interested in, and I guess in terms of like the development between the two of us is actually putting out our conversations that we have, rather than kind of putting questions to a guest. You know, so we're kind of going from 100% it's the guest with us actually asking those questions, whereas it's much more now us kind of also putting ourselves out there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's a good progressional feel. Let's hope it continues.
Yeah, and let's hope we can figure out how to frame a ceiling. Yeah, that's it. All right.
Thanks, Joey.
Cheers, buddy. Thanks, Pat.